to Resilience Gone Wild. I am here with my always awesome Kai Sorensen, my producer, who makes everything sound amazing. So, Kai, what's up? How are you?
A little cold, if you can't tell if you're watching. I'm in my Ninja Turtle hoodie, and the child is getting ready for dinner upstairs. So if you hear the scamperings of a 1.5-year-old, don't worry. It's totally normal. But yeah, I'm really excited for today. We're coming off of Parrotfish, which was one of the first episodes you and I recorded together. Yeah. And I had to throw in there, I had so much fun doing research on getting the sounds of the parrotfish. So if you go back and listen to that episode, I did a lot of digging to find an ethical, free version of the parrotfish, the sound of the parrotfish eating that coral. It was really fun to re-earth this interview with Emiliya. Here's Elroy speaking animals. Let's say hi, Elroy.
Hi, Elroy.
It was so much fun re-earthing that episode because it was one of our first we recorded back in August, and I know she's been had a profound impact on your life and your work. Yeah. And I think the stories she'll tell us and how she created her own story out of trauma was really inspiring. So I guess, give us a little bit of your experience with her and how you know her. And we can't wait to get to the interview.
Yeah, Emiliya is one of my greatest mentors in my life, and I met her. I actually signed up to take her certification in positive psychology, and it was supposed to start like March 10th, 2020, if anybody remembers what was happening that week. And we were supposed to be meeting in person in New York, and the world shut down. And we went online globally. And because of a couple of weird flukes, I ended up having Emiliya as my teacher online in this amazing group of humans. And she went through a really hard time that week. Those couple of weeks, her dad actually passed away, one of the early deaths from COVID. And she brought us through that. And she just wanted, she had this additional sense of purpose that aligned with all that she does in helping people get through COVID. So she started this every day. She went online and brought many hundreds, I think maybe thousands of us together to do joyful resilience activities. And wow. It was incredible. It went on for months and months, and it brought her, a sense of comfort that she was living her purpose and helping others get through this really hard time that she was really having a hard time with. Emiliya, comes to this work with a combination between just an internal passion for helping people and for helping people thrive, and some unbelievably difficult life experiences of just great challenges, family challenges, personal challenges that just continue. And she just inspires us all to be able to hit those bumps in the road and come back stronger and stronger. And, not toxic positivity, not pretending, just real life, super resilience. And that's a lot of what she teaches. So
yeah. And,
I am.
Yeah, right. And, here I am kind of learning it secondhand, right? Or maybe third hand, I guess. And I think so much of what you're talking about is how we find purpose in the hard points in life. So whether it be, I don't know, advocacy or helping others, like, I guess, where do you fall along that spectrum? Are you someone who's out there blazing the trails? Or are you like, what's the fish metaphor? Helping people fish to
teach people to fish, or fishing for them.
Yeah. Where do you fall?
It's a really important aha moment for me when I spent decades working in advocacy work, leading philanthropic organizations to try to support people who are having trouble, and often it was about giving them fish and just getting them through the short term. And I during a first couple of years with Emiliya, we came across this Sparketype, which was a friend of hers who had developed the methodology. It's an assessment, positive psychology assessment, and it's about identifying what lights you up and what sucks the life out of you. And we really work a lot on energy and energy management, common energy, shared energy, personal energy in positive psychology. And the Sparketype assessment gave me this this understanding of myself that what lit me up was to illuminate others, and I needed to learn to help me do that. And what sucked me dry was advocacy.
Yeah.
And it was this incredible life-changing moment when I figured that out and was in conversation with a bunch of other positive psychologists about it. And I walked away from all the advocacy, walked away from all the organizations that I was working with and for, and I became a teacher and a podcaster and a blogger and, all the things that I love to, an author, and all the things that I love to do that light me up so much more than they did. I uncovered my purpose and it changed everything. So to that end, there's all these great tools that help us to uncover what really can drive us in life and make it easy, so exciting to get up in the morning. Not just easier, but like boundless energy to jump out of bed in the morning because you have a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
And it can be individual purpose because it might just be that you love your family and that you just will do anything for your family and you want to get up and bake bread. Like that honestly is a beautiful sense of purpose. Or it could be a larger collective purpose. You could have, today is the second anniversary of the train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio.
Right. Wow. That was 2 years ago.
Yeah. Time passes, right? And, they've had a really difficult time getting cleanup to happen and getting the funding that they needed and to bring people together to, in a world of so much catastrophe, to be important enough to be recognized.
Right. Yeah.
And they, as a collective group, have this purpose that they never expected and never wanted to find, but they become environmental advocates as, that are going to help in other times, not just their own. So purpose is about, having, wanting to get up in the morning and do something that changes and makes you thrive and makes the world better as well.
Yeah, that's so beautifully put. And, you're talking about getting out of bed in the morning, it's with our 1.5-year-old, you kind of have to. But to that end, I think quickly into, Miles' life and kind of being a parent and learning those ropes. And it wasn't that hard to get up, right? Because that purpose is there because something needs you, right? Yeah. So whereas, before these times, 7 a.m., I'd be pretty grumpy about it. Even on limited sleep, like we did not sleep well last night. But I was up at 7 and there's a smiling baby in a crib. You're like, oh, purpose, right? It's like centering, it's grounding. And so, before we keep going on too much further, I definitely want to read another review before we get to the, and this came in 5 stars, just so you know. Gigi Zeller, is it Gigi?
I do know Gigi Zeller.
You do know Gigi. Okay.
And we had this awesome lunch the other day and saw an art festival. Love Gigi, yes.
So I have known Jessica for many years and so proud of the person she has become as an incredible teacher and coach. She brings the vibrancy and excitement of many sea creatures into the mix, applying their habits to our everyday lives. Her podcasts are very inspiring. I'm honored to call her my friend. How about that?
Oh, I feel the same way, Gigi.
Shout out to Gigi. All right, we'll let Gigi know we shouted her out on the podcast.
Totally.
All right, should we get to the interview?
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, everybody, enjoy.
Enjoy. Hi. Yay.
Hello. Yay.
Oh my God, I have been telling
And I
Kai.
get to see you next week.
I know, I'm
too.
so excited.
And
I'm wearing my shirt.
You're wearing your resilient shirt.
And
I'm wearing my, I think this is what a parrotfish looks like shirt.
So she's clearly, listen, thank you for listening to the episode. You do look like a parrotfish. You're awesome.
Right? I don't know if this is what a parrotfish should look like.
So welcome to Emiliya Zhivotovskaya. And I am so thrilled to have Emiliya here with me.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm so excited for you and so excited for all that you've created over the past few years. And this is just the next level. And I'm so thrilled and honored to be here with you.
Thank you, Emiliya. So given that I give you such enormous credit, validly, for moving me to uncovering my purpose and setting me forth on this journey of what I think is going to be like the chapter of life that takes me forward and leaves my legacy and all that. Share who you are, share where your deep, deep purpose and passion for life and for people has come from, if you don't mind.
Wow, that question. I mean, I'd like to give thanks to my mother, whose womb I came through. I mean, that's definitely where it came from. But it's such an interesting question because I think that as we even just put this under the umbrella of like, how do people figure out their purpose in life or understand that they have a purpose, not to mention being aware that they are on purpose. I think in some ways I feel incredibly blessed because I feel like I was born with a pretty strong sense of that. Like, even in the sense that so I was born in Kiev, Ukraine, and my family immigrated to America when I was 5, escaping the fall of communism. And I was born 90 miles from Chernobyl, and Ukraine is a very difficult place to live now, and it was also a very difficult place to live back then. And the very few memories I have of childhood, I have some pretty funny communism memories as I think about them, because I just remember like my mom putting me on line to stand, even though I was like 4 years old, to like stand here and wait for the bread line and like stand here and wait for the milk line. So of those like weird communist memories, I do remember I remember being little Amelia in like a stroller, and people would just be like, "Oh, look, you're so cute." And then they would say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I remember that even in like stroller age, I would just sort of go, "Учитель," which in Russian means a teacher. And then they'd ask me like, why do I want to be a teacher? I just assumed, well, my mommy's a teacher, so I want to be like my mommy. But then as I came to step into this understanding of like, who am I? And one of the ways in positive psychology that we describe purpose is we describe it the way that my friend and dear colleague Karen Rockheim describes it as the active way you uniquely impact the world. And for me, teaching and spreading is like, that is my purpose in life, delighting people, bringing out the best of them, helping them know that they are powerful beyond measure, and helping them navigate the ins and outs of their life so that they can navigate life with greater mastery. That's my purpose. That's why I'm here. But I don't think I really understood more of that until I went through my own hero's journey, as all of us do. And I think that that core aspect of like all human beings are wired with this gift of a yearning for a calling or for a quest or a journey to go on. And so that understanding that I would be here to help and to be of service was kind of always present. I can then fast forward to being in elementary school and Michael Jackson's like heal the world, make it a better place. I'm totally dating myself, but like we sang that song in chorus, and I was the kid who could not carry a tune for the life of me, but I was the most passionate singer of that song. Third row, big chubby cheeks and big bow in my hair. And I was like, that song was like, yes, like heal the world, like make it a better place for future generations. Like that I got it. Like that was what it was about. And then I remember at some point, someone somewhere in school said, well, that's not cool, or that's cheesy, or like how Pollyanna of you, or whatever that messaging was. And I just sort of learned like, oh, keep it to myself. Like I wasn't deterred. I wasn't like, oh, okay, that's not what I'm going to be here to do in life. It was just like, oh, be careful who you say that to, even as a young child. But that was just always something that was just really clear for me. I was like, if I'm not here to leave the world somewhat better when I leave than when I came in, then what am I doing here? And I had a series of challenges that my family and I navigated that started from childhood. When I was 14, my brother passed away. He was 24. And he was swimming at night with his fiance and some friends at the ocean. We lived close to Long Beach in New York, and my brother was a young 24-year-old who had his whole world ahead of him, had just become a stockbroker, got engaged, was going to be married, was getting ready to move out on his own. And his fiance started drowning in the ocean when they were swimming late at night. And my brother ran in to try to rescue her. And in rescuing her, he ran in after the other woman that was also in a similar position, and they drowned together. They probably drowned each other. And so that was the first sort of real massive challenge and adversity that I and my family had to navigate. And I think that how did I get here was through the understanding that it takes a village. And as a child, that loss in my family, in one way, put me very deeply on a spiritual path, because I feel like I had so much spiritual intervention that connected me with this idea that I don't know what happens when people die. We have no guarantee. And some people would say things like, your brother's still with you, or everything happens for a reason. Just like all of this storytelling that I saw. And it was like, I somehow intuitively understood that I have no way of understanding why this happened, but I'm going to tell myself a story and I'm going to stick to it. And so I just kind of like committed to a story. I was like, my brother was young, but he lived his life full out. And I don't know why this happened, but I'm going to use this to be a better person somehow. And so I used that idea of reframing that I came to later learn as a key tool for resilience. I learned this idea of just being connected to this possibility that there is something greater than ourselves in life. And that put me onto a very spiritual path and a spiritual quest of curiosity. And then many other challenges that came over the course of many years after that. My mom got diagnosed with ovarian cancer, something we battled for 10 years together, a very challenging, powerful, yet very painful journey for her. My mom passed when I was 27. My dad passed when I was 35. He died of COVID. And so there's this interesting sort of life that I live that I feel like I've been privy to. And I used to call it my polarized life, because even with all of these challenges, I also had so many powerful highs in my life where while my brother passed and it was such a difficult time, I also had this blessing of becoming a professional kids party entertainer, a career that I started at 14 and lasted until I was 26. And over the course of that time, I got to get paid a lot of really good money to have fun. Like, it was crazy. And I was traveling all over and got to be developed in this very crucial stage of my life to be able to create experiences for people and bring people happiness and joy and be a part of their most important life events, like their bar mitzvahs and their weddings and their sweet 16s and their corporate parties. And so it was like, wow, this contrast of this like incredible high and this really deep low, and learning how to navigate those. And even just right now, I'll be vulnerable in this podcast. I think this is the first time I'm sharing this in such a public forum, but just a couple of days ago on August 10th, I married the love of my life and had the most incredible day of my life. And we're still in that like happy honeymoon bliss kind of experience. And then a week later, I experienced what I would say was the hardest, most difficult day of my life a week later, which as I miscarried and wound up in the hospital for an emergency DNC for something that I had thought I had experienced a lot of pain, and I've had knee surgeries and I've had emotional pain of people that have been lost. And I was like, I never knew a pain like this was even fathomable in the human body. And it was just lasted the day and I'm fine now. But I literally had the thought, like, I'd rather be dead right now than feeling what I'm feeling. And I was like, the contrast, like, best day of my life, a week later, the hardest day of my life. And that's life. That's life, right? And so I feel like that life there's like that saying goes where like the best you can't control the tide, but you can learn how to surf. And I feel like that's been my life, is learning how to surf and then recognizing that we live in this really incredible, abundant time where there are people whose life and their purpose has been dedicated to researching how to help people surf better. And so I've gotten to learn the science and learn from the researchers and read the studies and conduct experiments myself. And then also just have to put this stuff into practice with my own life. It's just when you love what you do, you just chip away and you just keep doing it. So that's me in a nutshell, I think.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing the really hard stuff and the really beautiful stuff. And I'm so sorry that I'm so happy for you for the joy of having met the love of your life. And I was so, so blessed to have spent 5 days with the love of your life recently at a retreat that
did he turn
that
into the love of your life too?
He's
just so easy to love.
My gosh.
He's incredible.
Incredible. The most beautiful person, one of the most beautiful people in the world. And then to have such a moment of pain and sadness that, that the whole thing of like, who deserves happiness versus unhappiness, and those horrible lines about, people who suffer, they deserve to suffer, and people who are good, it's, you throw it out the window and you're like, it has nothing to do with who you are. Like we go through these horrible bumps in the roads and these horrible highs, and you're the gift of resilience to teach people. You have taught tens of thousands, I think at this point, right? Like people like me who are then teaching tens of thousands each, right? Like it's just the gift that you've brought forth to take whatever life you're given and, deal with the hard stuff, grow from it, and just thrive in the good stuff, because you get to do this once. We don't know what's next, as you said, right? So like make a difference in the world and leave it better than you arrived at. And, those pieces of wisdom are just what we need here. So, and they're all connected to purpose, right? So one of the other things that you said that really hit me was, and when Phil and I were talking about it earlier, who's on a podcast about the alligators and breathing, about the story in your head. And you chose like that story that you shared about your decision to choose a story, knowing the way your brain works. And you certainly do know that we put pieces together and we choose what pieces to put together in a story, and that you made the decision to say, this is the story that will move me forward in life, not keep me stuck. And I just think that's just one of the most important tools in our resilience toolbox, to like understand where the story comes from and that you get to choose it. Do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It is the foundation of what we call cognitive behavioral therapy, meaning a cognitive behavioral therapist helps people understand how their cognitions impact their behavior. So that we can use the example of you have two people witness an accident, two people watch the same thing happen, and we'll have very different stories of what they see. And so for me, the intuitive decision for that call to action came just because of the fact that I watched a lot of television, to be honest. There wasn't, while I was going to see the school psychologist and other things, like no one said, Emiliya, your capacity to flourish in the world is going to be based on your storytelling of this particular moment. But I joke that the way that I learned to speak English, because nobody taught me how to speak English. We came to this country and my parents had to go to work. And so I sat there in front of the TV and I used like Looney Tunes and commercials and all sorts of other things. And next thing you know, I'm speaking English. So, even though I don't watch a lick of television now, it was a big influence. And so honestly, the only thing I could say to myself was like, okay, of all the movies you've ever seen, this is that point in the narrative. This is the point in the movie or the show where the person has to make a choice. And I remember where I was in my bedroom. I had a picture of my brother up in the room. I had actually moved into his room because he was the big brother. He had the big room. I had the tiny room. Then my parents were like, well, you can take his room now. And that was weird because I was like happy I had a bigger room, but sad I didn't have a brother, so I'm just going through this. And so I was like, this is this point, like I have this turning point and this is the decision I'm going to make. But then of course, later on, as I came to study positive psychology, this is the foundation of everything from post-traumatic growth. So we hear a lot about post-traumatic stress disorder. And I think post-traumatic stress disorder is part story, but it's also part physiological. Whereas post-traumatic growth is really story-based, and then your body catches up. And so there's a lot to what happens when people go through traumatic events and they are disabled or dysfunctioning or stuck or suffering still. And then we know that there's this whole field of resilience and what helps people not be stuck and actually get back to where they were before. And then there's this field of how people grow as a result of trauma. And a lot of the interventions or exercises that we use to help people work that has to do with storytelling. There's a really powerful TED Talk by Amy Purdy, who is an incredible, resilient woman with this profound story of loss and creation. And she has a line that says, if your life were a book and you were the author, how would you want this story to go? We can't rewrite, we can't retell stories from the lens of the past, although we can still tweak the story. We can't change what's happened, but we can tweak the story for greater forgiveness and greater acceptance. But the storytelling aspect is the foundation, and recognizing that even when we have no way of telling if the story is true or not, the question is, does the story serve you and serve us? And I just had so many validation moments of that when my brother passed, that of course I can look back on and understand now. But the biggest one was the story of blame, of whose fault was it, and I realized very quickly that we all had, everyone that was involved in this had a different version of the story of why it happened. My version of the story initially was, this is my fault. Had I not begged my parents to go away that weekend, my brother would still be alive. His fiancée, Marina, who I still get to be in contact with, her and her husband came to my wedding. It's just so beautiful to still have that beautiful connection in our life. Hers was, if I didn't go in the water, he'd still be alive right now. My father took on the narrative, had I not moved my family to this country, it was my decision for us to move to America, my son would be alive right now. And my mom's is the most painful, which was, had I not raised such a brave son, he'd still be alive right now. And everyone else in between. There was so many stories. And I was just like, and here I am just watching the whole thing going, how fascinating. And that, even before I knew the line, how fascinating, I was still thinking, this is so interesting. And what we know from a neuroscientific perspective is that human beings are wired for storytelling. All of these wonderful animals that you are bringing us into connection with in your podcast, Jessica, they're incredible. However, they lack story. Yeah. Which is great. It's like we get to actually observe nature storyless.
We think they lack story at this point. We don't even know, because we're just don't know. Discovering unbelievable things that animal species can
That's
do.
True. Yeah. They like whether or not they have a sense of storytelling about who they are and what their purpose is, so that they just exist. But this ability to have a story about what has happened before and to tell a story about what's going to happen in the future. Up until now, scientists think that capacity comes from a prefrontal cortex and therefore a narrative telling brain, a wiring for stories. And so it's like, we're always telling stories. The question is whether or not the story you're telling serves you or doesn't. But that is the name of the game, from when you are born to when we take our last breath here.
It's so interesting. What's coming up for me is the goldfish and the 10-second memory, that like the goldfish only has 10 seconds of the story and then it's gone. And there's so many, pros and cons to the human capacity to live as a storyteller, and the lack of agency that so many people have, where stories they're not in control of their story because they don't know they can be. So it takes them down a path of a story that is not serving them, as you said. And then the opportunity to learn the kind of things that you're teaching and that you're teaching us to teach, where you can own your story and define your story and take all the dark stuff that happens and make meaning out of it and create your life in a positive, rippling, positive way instead. That human capacity is only great if you know how to use it. Otherwise, it's really difficult. Like, it creates all that fear and all that darkness and all that separation that we have these days. Like, so, yeah.
Going to the goldfish, it's like telling a goldfish what's water, because this thing, and that comes from so many different parables as to what it means that this is water. But the idea that superpower, that capacity that we all come in with, yet we don't even realize we have a choice. It's so present. It's such a part of the human condition that we don't even realize it. It would be like asking a fish, what is water?
By the way, we will post in the show notes the video of the the brilliant This Is Water by, and I'm drawing a total blank. Who wrote it?
David Foster Wallace.
Thank you, David Foster Wallace.
Yeah.
Yes, it's an incredible metaphor. So to that end, where I feel like we're going to a place where, as a child, the more you can learn about the control you have over your story and the options you have for how you live your life, the better. And you've created this incredible path to positive education and starting this whole journey of taking ownership of your life and your story at the earliest ages possible through teachers, your love teaching. Can you talk a little bit about the power of starting young and what you've done with this whole positive education path?
Yeah. And it's like we can start young, but the work is never done. So, we've built a number of different programs. I've built a number of different programs and access points for people to engage with positive psychology, particularly engage with it themselves as a profession. So for people who work in education or parents of children, we run a certification program called the PEC program, or the Positive Education Certificate, where we look at teaching positive psychology and equipping teachers with the tools to teach these skills to children. And developmentally, children will be in different stages of what they're capable of starting to explore. So with little ones, you're not going to be talking to them about the stories they're telling themselves, because developmentally, they're not quite actually making those stories just yet, but we can work on self-regulation and emotional regulation and mindfulness and presence, and start teaching them about gratitude. And at a young age, start recognizing the character strengths that children are already bringing in. And then as they get older, and we actually know developmentally when some of those hiccup points start for children, where they start to gain a sense of self-consciousness, and they go from being like very happy kids, just so happy with all the things, to all of a sudden downing themselves and comparing themselves. And they start creating narratives, and they start getting more sophisticated stories about how the world works. And this self-consciousness and a separation from parents and from others can lead to a different set of skills that we need to teach them. And a lot of these skills are not taught in school. So what I've been doing is working with our PEC program to help schools adapt curriculum that goes beyond just social and emotional learning, but also goes into the actual nitty-gritty skills of resilience and positive psychology, and how we can train teachers to learn this first for themselves. Teachers need this because we know that the success of a child and school is also strongly influenced by the resilience and the well-being of the teachers themselves and their parents, of course. So we have curriculum for that. And then we run our longest running program, our Certificate in Applied Positive Psychology program. It's called the CAP program, which was your, I think, entry point into us, Jessica. And so the CAP program is our deep dive, and it's for anybody that wants the equivalent of a master's degree, but without the master's thesis and without the reading the journal articles and writing journal articles. It's a kind of accelerated path of how you're taught. And over the course of 9 months, we give people a deep dive into just about everything that science has said are the pathways for resilience and well-being. And so that is, people bringing that into their own life. We also have programs where we train people in how to be life coaches, how to be resilience trainers, how to be consultants, how to give workshops, give courses. We have fully made for you programs that you can plug and play. And so that's a little bit of what we do, but a lot of it has to do with the starting with yourself. And so the Flourishing Center has everything from these deep dive certification programs all the way down to smaller programs that we call Lift. And we've gone through ebbs and flows from the pandemic of this program and how many classes we run. But right now I'm running a daily class every Wednesday at 11 a.m., which is the personal application of this, where I've wanted to, for years, build out a dojo, or like a place where people can go to practice positive psychology every day, just the same way you would go to the gym and take a workout class or a yoga studio, or I'm a big Orange Theory fan. So we even have a program called Lift that, for not our full certification programs, but for $10 a class, people can come in and they can just practice positive psychology every day, because this stuff is about habit change and it's about reframing and rewiring yourself. And so those are some of the different things that we do.
And one of the important, it's amazing. I've taken many of the programs. I've taught Lift, and
taught Lift,
which was a highlight of my life. But one of the most important lessons here, I think, that we need to really share is that it is not like you don't just like learn a resilience tool and then become resilient in that way. To just, for example, change the story in your head. I mean, it's a lifetime practice. I'm sure, you still have to switch the story, to pause and switch a story. It doesn't automatically just become the positive story just because you've been practicing it for 20 years or 30 years. It takes everything you would learn in Lift and in CAP and in PAC. All of them are lifelong practices, and the community that you create around the thousands of us that are all connected and are all talking about this and sharing this is what makes the difference. It's what makes the ripples happen. And to the aspect of teaching young children and their capacity to process the language and the concepts around, storytelling or whatever it is that they're not ready for. That's one of the things I love about this use of metaphor and animals, and the idea of giving them, the parrotfish purpose. I mean, Emiliya is the best. Like, she added the V to the vitality to the positive psychology model that has been, that is existent in our world of science. And she is dressed like a parrotfish because there's a metaphor that we need that we will benefit from being able to see the parrotfish when we think about purpose. It's chewing of the sand that if whoever's listened or hasn't listened to the episode before this, that was the preview to this, the parrotfish purpose is so powerful, and it gets them up every morning out of their sleep bubble, which you'll hear about as well in another episode. And they spend their day doing something to make the world better, to clean out and help the coral reef to grow and to thrive, and then to help the animals below them have sand to live in and us to play in and all that. So, there's language, there's concepts, there's metaphor. All of this is so much part of how our brain works best. And focusing on it is a great thing. You could just talk a bit about how you added that layer of positive psychology that really matters.
Yeah, when I came into positive psychology, the models that existed for well-being were looking at what are the pathways or what are the approaches that people would take if they wanted to become happier and they wanted to become healthier and to live more flourishing lives. And so when I first started, the model that the founder of the field, Martin Seligman, had gone by that came out of research was called the PEM model, which was the importance of positive emotions, engagement, and meaning. And so we identified that how do people become authentically happier? They could increase their frequency of positive emotions while decreasing the frequency or length of their negative emotions, not getting rid of them, but decreasing them some, becoming more engaged or connected to their life and their world, which is like being more mindful, being more present, using your strengths. And then this parrotfish aspect of having purpose, which goes under the meaning, having a meaningful life, a reason for being, feeling like your life makes sense to you, that you are able to be of contribution. And for many years of studying positive psychology, that was sort of the model. And then Martin Seligman added to the model from new additional research and added relationships as an essential pathway to well-being, and also a sense of accomplishment and achievement to well-being. And while I was a student and studying positive psychology for my master's degree, I also became a certified yoga teacher and had been on my own personal well-being journey, both with my own relationship to my body and health and wellness, but also with my mom getting sick. So when my mom got diagnosed with ovarian cancer, I was still in high school, and I would go with my mom to all of these doctor's appointments, and she had multiple surgeries and hysterectomies and hernia surgery surgeries, and she had her colon removed, and then her bladder removed. Like, she was incredible, the things that my mother had gone through. And when she got cancer, I was also trying my best to find all the ways that we could support her. And so I was looking at nutritional medicine, and I was looking at stress reduction. I was looking at nature exposure and physical activity and even laughter. And that approach that now then is the foundation of my PhD work, which is in mind-body medicine, are all the things that are considered complementary and alternative medicine. And I found that there is this separation between what was happening in positive psychology to everything else that was bodily oriented. And I felt like everything I was learning in my positive psychology training and yoga training, I was learning through the body. And it's like yoga does for the body what positive psychology does for the mind. But then in further training, understanding that you can't separate out mind and body. And in fact, now certain researchers use them as one word, mind body, because it's not mind and body. They're so intimately connected. They are just one. And so when I heard that Marty Seligman was open to changing his model, he went from PEM to PERMA. I was like, oh, this is my chance. And I said, Marty, if I can give you a research-based argument for why vitality is a missing part of the equation, would you be open to changing your model? And he wrote back to me very quickly, as Marty is known for, but he writes back with just one word. He's like, no. And I was like, okay. But sort of like, people telling me like how naive of me to want to make the world a better place. It was just like, okay, I went down the wrong direction for that. And I was like, but I know that this is the truth, is that we can't separate out flourishing from this aspect of well-being of the body. And that sometimes what people think about as, oh, well, why do we want to spend time in nature? Because it increases our positive emotions. Or why do we exercise? Because it'll give us a sense of achievement. That's sort of, I think, what Marty's argument was that he saw, well, no, this engagement with vitality is the thing that supports these other pathways. Whereas I felt, and now research supports, and a decade later, he came back to me and he said, Emiliya, you were right. Vitality does belong in the model, but he still sort of goes as like, some people go perma plus health. And I'm like, oh, just call it vitality, people. But all of the things that we look at as this physical approach, it's like, there's the same way that the parrotfish is not, we don't know why the parrotfish wakes up and decides to do what it's doing. It probably does it because it is what its body tells it to do. And so when we have this aspect of well-being and we're connected to our body, it's like, I don't just exercise, I don't just move because I know it's good for me. It's what my body knows to do. And that there's this wisdom to nature, and there's this wisdom to our body that we are extensions of. And so adding vitality to the model and making sure that all of the students who get trained in positive psychology through the Flourishing Center are not just taught the psyche separated from the body. We teach sleep and movement and food and sensuality and sexuality and nature and sunlight and breath and even how we hold our body in space. I'm actually feeling a bit embarrassed that you, Jessica, are standing, and I'm usually the advocate for standing station. I know, and I thought about it. I was like, oh, but I'm heading out in a couple of minutes, and I'm leaving for a couple of days, so I broke down my standing station. I do have an ergonomic setup, though, of a separation of my keyboard from my computer. But yes, ergonomics, how we hold our body in space. These are things we do. Not for like they are means within themselves, and that they are that we do them for their own sake. And so I'm very passionate about putting vitality onto the map and helping people see the intricate connection between the two and access the wisdom of the body. Like even right now, I'm working on that myself, where I know that with this recent miscarriage that I had, cognitively, rationally, emotionally, I felt like I was in a really good place. I was like, okay, I got a free boob job for my wedding dress because the, hormones changed my body very quickly. And I was like, wow, this wedding dress actually looks even better. And I saw the lessons in it and the blessing in it. And I was like, it's not the right timing. The body knows, we know we can get pregnant. We'll get pregnant again. Like I felt like I was cognitively in a really good place, but now I'm also sitting but there's a physical grief that my body has gone through and a physical experience. And I don't want to to circumvent that. I don't want to I don't want to spiritually bypass that. And so for me, I like the respect for my body in this process. And I have amazing people in my life that I turn to as somatic coaches that help me with that. I use dance, I use movement, or just this awareness of my body. Like, rationally, I think I'm fine. But the other day, I'm like, someone's like, "Oh, how are you feeling?" And I said, "Oh, we lost the baby." And I felt a grief come over my body in that moment. And it's bodily. It is not rational. It's not in my mind. I'm okay. But I respect that, hey, my body needs to catch up to that process. And so I think a lot of what my passion is around this vitality piece is just bringing people back into this home. Your body is your home for you, however you want to define who you are, and taking good care of it. It is the ultimate health care that we can depend on, and listening to it and being in respectful relationship with it. And that's something that I had to come to through many, 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 many winding roads, because that wasn't taught to me and it wasn't modeled to me. And I had to come into right relationship with my body, and then constantly remembering to do so, sleeping enough, not trying to be overproductive and sacrificing my body's needs.
And it reminds me of, because nature metaphors just pop up, you teach a lot about the different places in your body that have brains. Like to listen to your body doesn't mean listening to your head. It means listening to your whole body and scanning and paying attention to different aspects of your body. And the octopus, for example, has brains on all of its arms. Like, its brain isn't just in one place. And, to recognize that our bodies have wisdom and information and messages from every different part of our body, and to really listen and pay attention is so beneficial, right? Like, look at all the people who have aches and pains and just keep living through them and thinking they're going to work through them, but aren't actually working through them. They'll get, they'll get over them. I can work through it, but you have to do the work. You have to do the listening. Yeah. It's amazing. So I've taken a lot of your time, words of wisdom around whatever's come up for you here that our listeners will, there's been so many, but whatever's coming up that's just bursting from you.
Gosh, so much. But yeah, I guess maybe to go to where we just closed around this, like, listening to yourself, like being able to do this thing that sometimes we overcomplicate. Like, what does it mean to be mindful? What does it mean to be present? What does it mean to be in the now? And we can sometimes overcomplicate it, but this is called resilience gone wild. And so rather than like wild interventions and complex things for resilience, in some ways it can just be as simple as the training our capacity to just notice and be in the present moment, which can be as simple as tuning into your senses. So what do I hear? What do I see? What do I smell? What do I taste? What do I touch? What's happening right here, right now? And just leading with that curiosity. And it is a way of us being more resilient, because we can take life one step at a time, and we can be here now, even when I'm here now planning for what time I need to leave and what I need to grab. But it is that very basic process. And it's a process that can help you tune into your body. Like, my shoulder is a little tight, and, my neck could probably use a little massage, or, I'm thirsty and probably need more water, or I'm tired, I need to take a break, or, wow, this person's really, like, this thing that happened with this person is really upsetting me. Like, what do I need right now? It's being able to catch and notice those things. And because we have storytelling brains, and we can be in the past and we can be in the present moment, in the future, and we really have to train this present moment capacity, even if it's just for a few moments here and there. What am I grateful for right now? What am I noticing? What's beautiful around me? And when you just do that, you connect to nature, you connect to yourself, you connect to others. So maybe that's just my little tip.
Yeah. And I'm going to take it further, because I know that's, so much part of your thinking is notice your connection with people. Notice the energy that's moving back and forth with others in your life and others nearby and others that you know and others that you don't know, and what energy you're putting out there and that you're getting back. So, use all those senses for not just yourself, but a bigger picture of where your life is. Yeah. Thank you, Emiliya. You're the greatest gift in my life, and I so appreciate and I'm so grateful for this time that we had together, and for you sharing yourself with those who are listening and those who will listen. And I can't wait. I get to spend a weekend with Emiliya in a couple of weeks. So a joyful part of life. So we will give you all the notes and links and all the stuff that Emiliya has told you about, and that you can use to boost your sense of purpose in your life. And so it's all good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
This has been a production of BLI Studios, produced by me, Kai. Follow along with our other BLI produced shows at balancinglifesissues.com/podcast-BLI. Got an idea for the show? Email me, Kai, at balancinglifesissues.com. And don't forget to stay in touch with your host, Jessica, at jessica@winwinwinmindset.com. Anything else to add, Miles?
Yeah.